Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. I hope you guys are all having a wonderful Monday. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Phantom Crested Gecko. I feel like there's been a lot of good information that has came to light about the Phantom Crested Gecko in the last year or two. Unfortunately, I think a lot of it is very misunderstood and there's a lot of confusion surrounding it. So today we have a whole video dedicated to just Phantom Crested Geckos. So what actually is a Phantom Crested Gecko? Well, a Phantom Crested Gecko is what we would have referred to in the past as your patternless animal. Essentially, the Phantom gene masks, pattern, and adds melanin to your animals, hence why they were called patternless Crested Geckos. At the time of recording this video, there is still some debate whether or not patternless is its own thing and Phantom is something else, but right now we're considering them to be basically the same thing. Now that being said, not all phantoms are patternless. There are geckos like the reds with the white spots, phantom lily whites as well, where they have the lily white patterning on them. So not all phantoms are patternless, but most patternless geckos are phantoms. Now that being said, there is a lot of colors that you can get phantoms in as well. Of course, there are phantom lily whites in various colors, but there are also yellow, orange, red, and dark based phantoms. The easiest way I would say you can distinguish a phantom is by the lineage, if you know it's from a phantom pairing. If you can't do that, the next easiest way is by looking at the dorsal. Phantoms don't have any dorsal patterning. They might have a slight variation in color from whatever their base color is, but they're not going to have the normal dorsal coloring like you would on an extreme harlequin or something like that. And this can be a little bit tricky when you start getting into like some of the lower based animals, lower expression pinstripes and things like that, or a flame. So just keep that in mind when you're trying to determine whether or not your crested gecko is a phantom. So how does phantom actually work? Well, there had been some talk in the community for quite a long time that phantom might be a recessive gene. I initially heard about this first from an Altitude Exotics video back in 2017 titled Crested Gecko Genetics Explained. Brian was going over different crested gecko genetics, and when he got to phantoms, it was unconfirmed at the time, but it was thought to be recessive. Fast forward to 2021, the Foundation Genetics videos came out from Pangea, great videos by the way, and in there they basically confirmed what we had thought and that phantom is indeed recessive. Fast forward a little bit later in 2021, they also came out with another video titled Advanced Crested Gecko Morphs, which was basically a video all about phantoms where they go in a little bit more depth. But those are some great resources, and I'll have links down below in the description, and also to the Lil Monsters website, who was in the Pangea Foundation Genetics video. He has a ton of great information on there, and it really helped me understand things, and it hopefully will help you understand things too, and if you'd like to learn more in-depth things as well. But anyway, back to the phantoms, it behaves recessively when being passed along, which means it is the second morph to be confirmed as recessive within crested geckos, the first being Axanthics, of course. So to get more phantom crested geckos, you really have two options. You're going to have geckos that are het phantom, meaning that they're carrying one copy of the gene but not displaying it, and then you're also going to have phantoms themselves. So if you do phantom to phantom, you're going to get a bunch of phantoms. If you're doing hets, it's going to be a different percentage depending on if you're doing het to phantom, etc., etc. I don't want to go too much into that in this video, but if you'd like a video talking about the percentages and different combinations you can do, I can definitely do that as well. But I just wanted to show you some of my geckos and some of my own personal pairings to kind of prove that it is recessive to you, because this also helped me a lot when looking at it. So here we have one red male and one red female, both phantoms. All the geckos from this pair were phantoms, and they've been paired up more than once as well. No regular geckos, all phantoms. Again, the same male to a different phantom female. Again, same thing, all phantoms. Now this one, I wish I had lineage on, but the same male from before to a different female who looks normal. This girl was from Pangea. Ended up popping out about 50% phantoms and 50% quote normal geckos, which would then been het phantom, or they're carrying one copy of the gene. So this girl was likely the resulting of a phantom to normal gecko pairing. She was carrying the genes for it, and then when I bred my male to her, that's why I got 50% phantoms and 50% normal geckos. Now, the other thing that I can show you is a phantom to a gecko that doesn't have the phantom gene. The common thing is that you're going to pop out phantoms and it's all random, etc., etc. But I can show you from this pairing here, who was a normal male to a red phantom female, I ended up getting 100% red partial pins or pinstripes that are then 100% het phantom, because they're carrying one copy of the gene, but is being dominated by something else, so you cannot see it. But this is kind of how I really had an aha moment when I listened to those videos initially and then applied it to my own geckos. It's like, how could I have not have thought of this sooner? So now that we know that phantom is a recessive gene, it really opens the door to many things. Number one, producing more phantoms or not producing more phantoms and tracking our geckos to know which ones have phantom in them. But there's also still a lot of people who don't know this or don't understand it, and there's just a lot of misconceptions about it, which I wanted to talk about today. So one of the misconceptions that I've seen is when you breed two red harlequins together, you're going to get some percentage of phantoms, which is not true at all, but I can also see why it started. The reason this probably started is because to get most red harlequins, somewhere in the lineage there was a red phantom bred to a normal crested gecko, which we know now would produce hets. And when you breed two hets together, obviously you're going to get phantoms. So it is possible that a good percentage of red harlequins, when you breed them together, are going to produce phantom crested geckos, but there is also some harlequins that would not be het for phantom, meaning they're not carrying any copies of the gene and would just be normal red harlequins. However, I can see why this would have gotten started because I'm sure a large percentage of red harlequins have phantoms somewhere in their lineage. That could have easily been passed down from generation to generation without anybody knowing, and since we haven't tracked it in the past, it's really hard to say. The next misconception that I find to be very confusing is people labeling pinstripes as phantom pinstripes because they are completely different. And if you go on MorphMarket right now as we speak, there are normal pinstripes in the phantom category labeled as phantom pinstripes, which is very, very confusing, especially if you're not understanding how the phantom gene works, because those geckos are not going to be recessive for phantom, and you're not going to be able to produce normal phantoms out of them unless they have phantom genes somewhere, which some of them might not. So that's another common thing that I think needs to hopefully be more understood as we go along in the future, just because it is very confusing. The last misconception that I could think of about phantoms, and also something that you can check right now, is that in the phantom category, again on MorphMarket, there is phantoms that are labeled as 100% het phantom, which is completely different and doesn't make sense, in the sense that a gecko that's 100% het phantom is going to be a normal gecko that's carrying one copy of the gene. And a gecko that's a phantom is going to be carrying two copies of the gene. You'll be able to see that it's phantom. So labeling phantom crested geckos as 100% het phantom not only doesn't make sense, but is also not accurate. And I feel like that's also probably leading to a lot of confusion. On the other hand, after I discovered all of this, I have labeled two geckos now that I've put up for sale as 100% het phantom, meaning they're carrying one copy of the gene, and people will know that it has phantom in it. And I think this is one of my biggest goals, hopefully, is maybe if with more awareness, people will not only start to track their pairings more that have phantoms in them and start labeling geckos as het or possible het, but also we can lead to geckos that we know don't have phantom in them. Hence, like I was talking about earlier with the red harlequins breeding and making phantoms, it is possible to have red harlequins that do not have the phantom gene. And so, maybe in the future we will know, oh, this red harlequin has phantom, this one doesn't, etc., etc., and it'll make things a lot more easier in the future to pick out your pairings. Maybe you like the phantoms and you don't mind if you get one that's het phantom or a possible het. Maybe you don't like it and you don't want that. So this is one of the most eye-opening, interesting things that I don't want to say recently discovered, but I think needs to be shared out there in the community, because it's great. It really is. This makes so much sense to me, and hopefully you find it as interesting as I do, but hopefully this video was educational in some way. I apologize if I used any of the terms incorrectly. If I did, leave a comment down below. With that being said, if you would like to see the phantom video on your explanation of some of the different, phantom, 100% het, 50% possible het, 66%, I can also do that as well. Let me know what you guys think about phantoms down below in the comments. Are you a fan of them? Do you hate them? Do you love them? Anything you want to let me know about phantoms. And with that being said, I will see you in my next video.